This is Breaking the 180, the podcast where we're keeping track of everything going on in film, television, and media in an increasingly unstable world. As you know, things are a little hairy right now out there, but hey, that's why we're here, to at least give you the lowdown on what's worth escaping into, to get a little distracted by it all.
Black rain is indeed falling.
Yep.
Over Tehran. Could be happening here soon if the clowns in charge decide to double down.
It'll be interesting if this recording is being listened to by archaeologists of whatever is around in 1,000 years from now, when they're trying to figure out what we did to ourselves. But
we will be immortal men.
We will be indeed immortal men if that's the case. Because the times are ripe for the film we're going to talk about today, Peaky Blinders, the Immortal Man.
Tommy, you live in a house haunted with ghosts of people who died because of you. You abandoned your kingdom, and you abandoned your son.
How does it feel to be a poor but in front of now?
Your gypsy son is running the Peaky Blinders like it's 1919 all over again.
I could tell his secrets that would turn me down.
I'm going to say right off the bat, instantly one of my favorite films of 2026 so far.
This is a very good film. I am a huge fan of the series. The series, of course, being Peaky Blinders, which began in 2013. It's a BBC Netflix co-production starring Cillian Murphy, and over the years, a bunch of other incredible British, Irish, American thespians. And it ran for 6 years.
Created by Stephen Knight, who you may recognize from actually a couple of
He's been quite busy. He did House of Guinness. I think he recently did a show about underground boxing starring the incomparable Stephen Graham.
Basically, after he gained some traction doing thrillers and writing films for major directors like Eastern Promises for David Cronenberg. And you remember that really good Tom Hardy movie, Locke? He also wrote that one. He did what a lot of successful screenwriters do, which is they, at least in our time, they transitioned to TV, and he decided to jump into streaming, and Peaky Blinders was his first real big certified hit. I'll just say, a show is successful when people start trying to ape the wardrobe a little bit.
And the haircuts. In fact, we'll even link an article, a really awesome article, that in Afghanistan, a bunch of lads were dressing up like the Peaky Blinders, and the Taliban actually had to ban those outfits. This isn't a joke. This is real, and we're going to link it down below.
Hope those guys are still.
Hope those lads are indeed
styling,
doing well. That is, that does show you how great art can inspire people in corners that you would least expect it. But I think what's so impressive about the show is that despite its prestige, despite its writing, it still feels like a niche show. I mean, it has incredible production value, a banging soundtrack, a star-studded cast over 6 seasons in a movie.
6 seasons in a movie!
And it still hasn't really broken through that much, at least in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, it has a big fan base, right? And it did acquire enough of a fan base in the United States. It never reached the level of whatever, the HBO stuff like Game of Thrones,
Succession. Like not overnight success. Like even Succession, it was around season 2 when it really popped off. Game of Thrones, a couple seasons for it to really become this mass
Cultural
phenomenon. But Peaky Blinders, it's fascinating because, yeah, I said niche. Niche isn't the right word because it is big, but it's like pockets around the globe. It's not like an international pop culture sensation. It's fascinating.
It's a cult hit, basically. It's a genuine cult phenomenon.
And there's a reason for it. The style, both in terms of the amazing production design, but the actual aesthetic. And it's been fascinating. After watching The Immortal Man, I've seen some interviews with Stephen Knight, who's a very eloquent speaker. He loves history. And he mentioned that even going down to The Red Right Hand, which is the theme song by Nick Cave, he didn't write it for the show, but they used it for the opening credits for the first season, that he chose that specifically because he thought of the show as like a Western.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That the style of the show, it has this asynchronous, iconoclastic editing style. It uses punk music, which evolves over the show, which he found a rhythm that really sits with you.
Yeah, it makes the show in a way very timeless, especially because it's covering a particular span of time in European history. It starts in basically the tail end of World War I.
1919. So the show...
Year my grandmother was born.
Wow.
Crazy enough.
It goes from 1919, and I believe the 6th season goes through 1933.
Yeah.
And then the film jumps to 1940, which is a very smart choice. But it's one of those few shows that evolves over time.
Oh, yeah. And
in smart ways. And this is going to be a review of the show, which you can actually check out a new sub-series called Breaking It Solo, where I kind of talk about an overview. But it's impossible to talk about the film without setting the groundwork here. That they could have just done the same thing every season, right? These fascinating gangsters with these larger-than-life personalities and their compatriots, their antagonists, the snakes in the grass. But Stephen Knight decided that it would actually go through time.
Exactly.
And the ambitions of the Peaky Blinders would also evolve.
Every season jumps ahead 2 years or something, right? Yeah, it's like 2 years. And quick side note for anyone wondering if it's more than just a period fiction piece, the Peaky Blinders were an actual gang that did exist in the late 19th and early 20th century. We don't know if they were that heavily involved in the politics of the era, but they did exist. Composed a lot of what we would call at the time, and still call them, marginalized communities in the UK. In the case of the Peaky Blinders in the show, they're Romani people. There are a lot of Irish and Scottish were also involved with these gangs that started to grow a little more in prominence with, that wise legal maneuver in the U.S. called prohibition, when smuggling alcohol could bring you a pretty penny if you had the right outfit.
And that leads us to the film. Now, to me, this is a fascinating film to talk about. And in many ways, this will be similar to our Halloween episode we did on the X-Files Fight the Future film.
A good comparison, yeah.
Because we both talked about the film as is, which you can enjoy as a theatrical experience. But for us, you can't divorce it from the show. So we have a couple questions that we can ask, which is, one, is this film a great epilogue to Peaky Blinders? And two, how does it work as a film? Very similar questions we asked when we talked about Fight the Future.
Very, very good points, because one of the trickiest things, it used to be very tricky to expand a series into cinema. Now, at least technically and aesthetically speaking, it's a little smoother just because so much TV now is cinematic, right? There's almost no difference between aspect ratios and stocks that are used on some shows and what you use these days to shoot a feature film. what's great about Immortal Man is it is a flawless expansion of the qualities of the show, but also a really darkly beautiful extension of the story that's set up in the 6 seasons of the series.
And the trick is when you're doing a film that is an extension of the show, and I use the word epilogue because the show did have a season finale. And I think if you liked how that season finale ended, awesome. If you're not a huge fan of the movie, there's enough distance in time that you can just take the finale as your ending. But this film also does what a good epilogue is, where it's that just little bit after the story that gives that extra, more personal closure.
Yeah.
I would say that the series over time, as the ambitions of the story became bigger, there was an interesting contrapuntal quality that it also became more personal. That
Yes.
all the things going or happening around Tommy became more personal to him.
Tommy is in Thomas Shelby, played by Mr. Oppenheimer, Cillian Murphy, who basically heads this outfit called the Peaky Blinders, composed primarily of the Shelby clan, right? It's a Romani family that sticks together basically as a gang. I mean, they're a gang, for lack of a better word. In the early episodes, the heads of the family were basically Tommy and his aunt, Polly, played by that really amazing actress who passed away,
Helen McCrory.
who passed away like 2 seasons before it ended, or 1 season before it
Yes.
ended, around there. And we follow, to quickly recap, we follow their evolution from a small outfit to essentially
Dealing with like bookies and
yes.
other rival, basically turf wars, basically.
into becoming their own corporation, basically into a fully fledged company that functions as a philanthropic outfit, a distribution corporation. That's also a front for their ongoing illegal activities.
How very relevant.
How very and Tommy, like so many other gangsters before him,
Becomes a politician.
Becomes a politician, exactly. Very, very relevant, right? And like so many other gangsters, like Michael Corleone and these guys, his ultimate dream is to make the Shelbys legitimate, right? He would like them to be an actual respectable aristocratic family that's not known anymore for, gouging out the eyes of people that cross them and that sort of thing.
That's not how caste system works.
Right.
In England, that's not how that works.
And that's a very important subtext in the show. One thing I love about the series, and there's some of it in the movie too, but in the series, they would explore those class issues and the politics of early 20th century England so well, because you can't really fault the Peaky Blinders for the decisions they make or the outfit they've become, precisely because the conditions of their world have pushed them that way. Tommy and his brothers, for example, suffer from PTSD because they went to fight in World War I. So they came back from the trenches affected guys.
I believe they were literally building the underground tunnels.
Yes, yeah, they were diggers, which is a theme that runs all throughout the series, where you see how Tommy is haunted all throughout the show by how, as they were doing the tunnels, they would find themselves in close hand-to-hand combat with German troops.
Essentially, he basically died over there.
Yeah.
And I think that's a running theme throughout the show.
Yeah.
That he finds moments where he genuinely feels like he's alive again, but you are seeing a guy who's doing things as if his time has already run out, and he's just filling this extra time with things to do before.
Or he's seeking something he can't quite name yet, right? This is a man who genuinely cares for his family, genuinely cares for his loved ones, even though his capacity to fully open up and love has been stunted, right, by all the violence and the terror of the war. A running theme throughout the series is that really his true love is a spy working for the police, who he falls in love with in season one, um, who works for a copper, brilliantly played by Sam Neill. I mean, he's a fantastic villain in the first season and second season. Um, and it's like the one time Tommy really loves someone, but spoiler warning, she's killed early in the series, and she's like a ghostly presence around him for the rest of the series.
I think one episode after they get married.
Yeah. At a party, at a dinner party, she gets killed. So he's a tragic figure, and we'll talk more about that later. That Aristotelian aspect of tragedy to the show and to the movie, but he's very much a tragic man. He's trying to do good, but he's entrapped by all these tragic
as a gangster,
circumstances.
right?
Yeah.
And despite doing all these maneuvers and playing this chess with local gangsters and more threatening foes, whether it's from the church or through the halls of parliament, his loved ones die.
Yeah.
And it is a fascinating show that he becomes more ghostly, right? That it's like he's being taunted by fate. Like, before you go, before it's your time, you need to see all your loved ones also disappear. By the way, if it isn't already clear, we are full spoilers, because honestly, it's honestly impossible. In order to really talk about the film, you do have to go into these elements. And again, we are also trying to answer if the film works just as a film on its own, or if it's fully contingent on the show. But even to answer that question, we do have to talk about these elements from the show.
One of the scenes I was talking about it earlier with you today, that I liked in the show was when Tommy suffers yet another loss, a very personal loss, and Alfie, played by Tom Hardy, a Jewish gangster, basically in 1920s London, tells him that because Tommy feels Alfie has betrayed him and wants to go basically get retribution for what has happened. And Alfie just kind of tells him straight up, hey, this is the nature of our business. This is what kind of world do you think you operate in? This is the way our line of work operates. And I find that very interesting, because it's not so much to shame Tommy or to cast a moral judgment. It's more about how it's almost like the material rules of how he operates put him in these situations, right? Hey, like our president, if you start a war, stuff that tends to happen in a war tends to happen. So for me, that was very rare, because you don't see that usually in crime films. In crime stories, you basically have like the good guy and the bad guy.
You have, despite the framework of gangsters being, I don't know, if we want to use the word amoral, right? But they're technically on the opposite side of the law.
Yeah.
What a lot of screenwriters like to do is within that framework.
Yeah.
You have, oh no, but these are the moral gangsters. These are the good gangsters. And all the bad things that are happening to them is because rival gangsters are completely amoral.
Yeah, like, wouldn't it be nice if the Corleones were just left alone to extort and run New York on their own?
Innocently.
Innocently.
So innocently.
So innocently. Whereas here, I love the complexity, the layered nature of it, because Tommy is at heart a good man with his flaws, right? As we all have them. So he's a good man who also then has to deal with his flaws, with the nature of his chosen way of making a living.
Well, he kills people.
He kills
gets
people,
killed. He schemes. I mean, but
The Sopranos did that early on very well too. That's a nice comparison. The Sopranos would have these really great episodes where Tony Soprano just wouldn't really know what to do when his daughter would up front just rub it in his face that, well, Dad, I love you, but you are a criminal. I mean, like, at least in terms of what the law of the land is, you run a criminal enterprise.
Well, one thing I brought up in my little essay is that I don't think Stephen Knight's approach is that very simplistic. It's good men who do bad things trope.
Yeah, exactly.
Or bad men in technically positions of moral authority. That's not what the show is about. It is about people and interpersonal dramas and the conditions. I think he's very much obsessed with place and time.
Yes, absolutely.
As any good screenwriter who focuses on historical drama should be.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's and to make the characters feel like living, breathing people, right? Like living, breathing characters. There are, even when he presents a villain in the show, I do like how there's still subtext there. So, for example, in the last 2 seasons, Tommy starts being basically pulled into the orbit of this fascist British figure, Oswald Mosley, who did exist, who did live, and Mosley is wonderfully played as a very toxic, classist fascist.
Played by Sam Claflin. I think it's one of his best performances.
Oh, it's amazing. Amazing.
And that's really where the class angle comes into play.
And you see how, okay, who's
also his wife is just amazing.
Ava Braun with an English accent, but worse. I don't think Ava had the IQ level of Mosley's wife. But what I love about the character too is that, okay, fine, Tommy operates in this dangerous, lawless terrain. But who is the more frightening monster, right? It's this guy who wants to take over England and is a total viper. You know?
Well, he examines Tommy Shelby, the character, and I think Stephen Knight also explores the nature of what power is.
Yeah.
Through the ranks of British society of the time.
Yeah.
Right? Because when Tommy faces a threat that he can't just pull a gun on, what does he do?
Yeah. Well, and notice too, I love too the subtext of how it's not like Tommy can even appeal to other forces for help, even though as the plot develops, he starts spying on Mosley for the British government. But no one's really lifting a finger to stop this guy. And it's a testament to how we forget fascism was not exactly an outlier movement in the 30s. Now we talk about how horrible Nazism was and fascism was and all these things. But in the series, you feel like Tommy's almost left alone having to take on this guy because the system really can't do anything.
England was prepared to totally ally with the Nazis. In fact, Churchill probably believed in many of the things Hitler believed in.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
Except the only problem was that Hitler started invading countries that Churchill and their allies deemed worthy of saving.
Exactly.
I mean, let's not forget that Winston Churchill killed roughly 3 million Bengalis.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the worst famines in modern human history.
Oh, and he thought Gandhi was a joke, and he said the Bolshevik baby had to be strangled in its cradle during the Russian Revolution. I mean, I'm sure part of his thinking, strategic thinking, was that also if Hitler conquers all of Europe, aside from threatening England,
no more commies.
Yeah, well, and it became dangerous once Hitler not only started threatening England and all of Western Europe, but what if he then decides to go conquer the British colonies? You know, I mean, that's something Tommy, I don't think, can foresee. But Tommy feels in the air that this is really dangerous stuff. These fascists, like this is incredible, and being Romani,
yeah,
the theme constantly comes up that they're targets,
which is brought up in the latest film. Yeah. And one thing I do want to add is not only do the stakes, like I mentioned, right? We have this contrapuntal dance of escalation because we have grander stakes, but more personal motivations for Tommy.
Yeah.
And it's also reflected into the look of the show.
Oh yeah.
And the
Beautifully
editing.
shot, yeah.
Because in the early seasons, it does go for that more punk, rock, edgy, quick-cutting style.
There's a lot of PJ Harvey tracks, a lot of Nick Cave is the theme song for the first few seasons, but there's also a lot of other Nick Cave
Idols,
jams. Yeah.
too.
Like a lot of Nick Cave songs keep popping up throughout the whole show, yeah.
But throughout seasons 4, 5, and 6, we get a more somber tone. And we see that. It doesn't get rid of the soul, right? Because it's still Peaky Blinders. But things become a lot more somber in the color grading, in the pacing, in the way the music is used throughout the show.
It's not as frenetic, and to the point where the series finale, we're going to talk about the movie, but the series finale was feature length. It was like an hour and 22 minutes. So it does start taking on this grander scope. Also, because Tommy's world is changing. Not only does his world start getting a little darker, his own life goes from, again, this street thug to a guy living in an estate, right? So he has to carry himself now more as, he's a gangster, but now he wants to carry himself more as more of a classic gentleman. And so the two worlds start colliding as the show ramps up towards its really well done climax.
And that leads us to the film. What makes the film fascinating is it starts in 1940. So there's a 7-year time jump, which I think is great because that allows it to work in its own bubble.
Lets the story breathe, because in real time anyway, it's been 4 years since the show ended. So you feel that sense of, oh, we're coming back to this world we left in our time 4 years ago, and in the time of the movie 7 years ago. So it's not a jarring thing to get back into, and no one needs to be digitally de-aged or anything.
No, not at all. No, and unlike the show, one of my I suppose my criticisms with the show is sometimes between episodes or between seasons, because of the time jump, there would be changes that my brain would say, did I miss something?
Yes. No, that
like, especially
often,
between episodes.
Yeah.
I thought that maybe I'd missed an episode or something, that I skipped something because characters would be missing.
Like season 2 when they open and they just kind of drop it that Tommy, the communist, his sister married, that they just died. I was like, wait, did I not watch the previous finale? And then, oh no, well, I guess the actor, something happened or he didn't want to come back or whatever, so they just throw it out there that he got consumption or something and died.
And luckily in the film, actually surprisingly, that isn't too much of an issue.
No,
actually.
not at all.
And
not
the
at all.
time jump actually allows them to make some actually very creative choices.
Yeah.
And this is where absolutely unequivocally we have to get straight into spoilers.
This is your last warning about that?
And honestly, I think we liked it enough that it warrants us really kind of getting into the meat and potatoes. So first and foremost, one of the main characters of the show, Arthur,
the hot-headed brother,
he is dead
gone
at the start of the film.
You're gone for good.
He is not even a ghost of the man appears in the film. Tommy is, for all intents and purposes, alone. He lives alone in a new estate, because you may remember the really lavish one he was living in the show was blown up at the end of the series. Now he's in another, your classic British countryside estate.
It's like self-isolation.
Oh yeah, the place looks very cold, empty almost. There's no sense of luxuriousness in the home, even though he clearly has a lot of money. And he's writing a book. He's writing his memoirs, basically. Hence the title of the movie, because the name of his manuscript is The Immortal Man.
Here I come. Oh, here I come. Oh.
I'm so glad that no one called him the Immortal Man.
Yeah.
Because let's be real,
Yeah.
there is some very good writing in the show,
Yeah.
but there is also some very on-the-nose blunt writing.
Oh,
There's
yes.
that really fascinating contradiction, which it's the kind of love-hate, not hate in that kind of way, like the way I hate Honora, but that kind of just like, no, that's so tacky.
Oh, I know.
I'm so glad no one did that. But yeah, he is writing his memoirs. He also basically lives next to his family graveyard.
Yes, where his hot-headed brother is buried. And you're right. I used to have that issue with the show. I really, really like the show, but and I mentioned this to you at the time as I was binging it, which is sometimes I wish, imagine if like David Milch had penned that show, the Deadwood guy. Again, there are beautiful moments in the show in terms of the writing, and it is a very well written show. But there were a couple of moments where you would grit your teeth a little bit, like, okay, that's.
There was a hierarchy in terms of dialogue.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
and it's. I'll kind of reiterate briefly my thoughts on my little essay. Like, clearly, Tommy gets the best written
Yeah,
lines of the show. Right, Arthur gets great lines.
Yeah.
Alfie gets great lines.
The women don't get that many great lines. I mean, they're good. They're great actresses, but
Polly does.
Yes, I guess Polly. Well, because she was the strongest female character. I mean, she could steal a scene so easily. But a lot of the other, I thought Tommy's sister barely got any memorable lines. She would just kind of pop up.
Not until later, though.
Right,
when
later,
when she confronts the American gangsters, I think in season 5.
Oh yes, no, you're right. Yeah,
she does come into her own later.
Yeah,
but that's because more people were dead at that point, so they had to elevate. But it is that fascinating thing that to me makes the show so gloriously imperfect. Is that it's like within an episode, right? You get the classical filmmaking cut to the punk rock music jumping in, the bar fights, and then the one-liners.
Well, and I could forgive the show. It's funny. You know how some of these have to do like funny historical name drops? Like that season where Adrian Brody plays a fantastic role. Adrian Brody plays a gangster from the U.S. who comes in to extract basically revenge on the Shelbys. And in the big showdown with him, right when he thinks he has them trapped, Polly basically says like, well, we've already made contact with somebody in Chicago, Mr. Al Capone. And it's like, of course, you guys are hanging out with Churchill and Al Capone, which is part of the fun of the show. But definitely soapy. Like it could get a little soapy sometimes in those moments.
And that, of course, extends into the film.
Yeah. Not as much, though. The film, I thought, probably one of the strongest scripts in the entire franchise, I thought.
I would say it is strong, but I'd say it's perfectly on par with season 5 and 6.
Yeah. In that tone, keeping that tone
in
going,
that tone. So first and foremost, one of the hardest things when you analyze a film based on a show is how is the tone going to fit in?
Yeah.
Right? Because as we brought up in our X-Files discussion, most films that were based on TV shows were based on like TV soaps and sitcoms. So much lower budget. So the film clear step up from in every aspect. But when you get to something like the X-Files and now Peaky Blinders, the quality of the show. Now, let's also remember that the X-Files was still network TV, Peaky Blinders streaming, right? Between each season was a year or two. But there's less of a gap between the show and the film, but you can always see those things in the film that just give it that little extra touch that makes it worthy for the silver screen.
You know, the show obviously had a cinematic feel, but this one clearly had the texture of a movie shot on celluloid, on film.
And also we should add, we saw it in a theater, which I like to talk about special screenings, right? When we talked about Crime 101,
Yeah.
we saw it in IMAX, which was very special. And seeing this on the big screen felt so special.
Oh, yeah.
I know,
It was so
actually,
much fun.
you pulled what I did with X-Files, where I finished the whole series the night before the revival came back. And I believe you did the same with the show. So it was a little bit more fresh for you.
Oh, yeah. Like it felt like it was easier to feel the continuation, but also the difference, right?
Yes.
Between feature film and the
But it
series,
also felt special for me because I did binge most of the series up until about season 4, and then the last 2 seasons I was able to watch as it came out. So there's been a bit more of a gap, but it still felt very special watching this finale, this epilogue, and not feeling disappointed, like there was a drop or that they missed a beat. And yeah, including the look. And when I talk about evolution of tone and aesthetic, this takes place in 1940. Speaking of silly things, there's a shot at an arms factory. And this was a historical thing because all the young lads were sent off to die on the front. Women took up factory jobs.
Yes.
And we open on a Birmingham arms factory.
Beautifully shot, though.
Beautifully shot. And I'm going to give flowers to the DP in a second. However, it does one of those things that it's her birthday and they bring out a birthday cake. And the moment they do that, George Steele was the DP of this film. He also worked on Alcie's favorite film, Heart of Stone.
Oh, my God. I cannot imagine how the person who made The Immortal Man is the same person who made Heart of Stone.
That's a good point because the director of this film and the DP are frequent collaborators. So George Steele was behind The Lens and the Look, and Tom Harper directed it. And they both collaborated on other films like The Aeronauts, which I think was an Amazon production. They also did War and Peace, the BBC adaptation.
Oh, see, that one I quite like. That was really enjoyable, actually. That was a solid War and Peace.
And in this one, no, the look, it's set during wartime, right? Birmingham is frequently getting bombed. It's gritty, it's dark, things are on fire.
And even the score, right? Because it brings back that punk energy, but very measured. In a way, the music here truly does enhance the urgency of the material, because the way the music works, it, to me, captures in an even stronger way the actual mood of the times than what you would get from just your average period music.
So there is a very nice balance. And I will say I did find some of the needle drops a bit on the nose.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, it didn't detract, but...
There were a couple in the show where it's like a guy's getting stabbed and the song will literally be like, I'm going to put a knife in your... Okay, like we get...
But you bring up a good point. Because part of the duality of the film is also reflected in the soundtrack, co-written by Martin Slattery and Anthony Yen. So there's a lot of kind of quiet orchestral moments, sometimes with guitar, sometimes kind of stripped down covers. But the first time we see Tommy, more subdued. The very first time that we see the new Peaky Blinders, get a hard rock cover. I was actually shocked by what the opening of the film was.
Oh.
Which was in a concentration camp.
Yeah.
Of a bunch of prisoners making
counterfeit money,
which is actually a real thing that happened. So this is the Now, the Peaky Blinders weren't tied into this event from the best of my knowledge, but the basis for the plot is actually based on a real Nazi plan to cripple basically the Western economy through the Bank of England by introducing counterfeit bonds.
Oh, and what's cool about that opening too, and it kind of goes to what I was saying about the music is,
It starts off melancholic, and then we see Tim Roth. It actually kicks into kind of a hard rock.
which is cool because it captures again. It makes so immediate the sense of the forces at play. How this is Tim Roth plays basically a British collaborator who is trying to help the Nazis win the war, John Beckett. And that introduction is great because instead of making it all feel detached, I think World War II movies, especially nowadays, feel very detached because they have this standard score, standard approach.
Well, also they do this thing where they've basically turned Nazis and Nazi leaders into cartoons.
Yes, exactly.
And I don't mean in the way that, like, I think in order to strip away the power of evil people, you do need to look at them as who they were, which was losers who had to compensate for so much. But what I mean is that we don't see any context for them anymore, and it's just easy to put Himmler or these guys on screen and just make a shitty movie because, the content will do the heavy lifting. I hate that.
Yeah, they're caricatures now. They're just the equivalent of a comic book villain in the culture.
No, it's totally true. And same with movies that are specifically about the Holocaust or concentration camps.
The Tattooist of Auschwitz that came out 2 years ago, which was also, I mean, they were trying to basically do a Nicholas Sparks movie in Auschwitz, whereas in a movie like this, you feel the edge and the fact that Beckett is not just a cartoon villain. He's a collaborator. He's a guy that could exist today. You know, he's that kind of neo-fascist figure that could be around today.
And he finds that right tone in the performance because he does have slightly humorous points, but they also ground him in the reality that he also fought in World War I.
Yeah.
But just like Tommy, they found different avenues for their their traumas.
Well, and we have to remember that this generation being depicted, this was their arch. And one thing I've loved always about Peaky Blinders, and now with the movie especially, is that it basically captures the arch of the generation that lived through World War I and World War II. Because like Beckett, we have to remember that Hitler and Mussolini also fought in World War I. These guys were products of everything that kicked off the century in a bloody fashion and just continued on. That's why some historians have, like Enzo Traverso and Anthony Beaver, have started calling that period of World War I and World War II like the 20th century version of the 30 Years' War. What that really was a kind of European civil war that went on from World War I to the end of World War II. So that's why there's that link between Beckett and Tommy.
And actually one of the best shows, probably one of my favorite shows of all time, and I don't say that lightly, it's called Babylon Berlin.
Yeah.
And it's one of the few shows that not only explores the Weimar Republic in Germany right after the war, but it also explores how that entire society was ripe for the Nazis to take over. They actually explore the conditions that led to the fascists taking over. Spoiler alert, it was basically a rank petri dish, so it wasn't that hard.
Exactly.
But it's one of the best shows I've ever seen.
Oh, great one. Which used to be on Netflix along with Peaky Blinders, but now is it still in that one?
It's called M Hertz or Hertz.
And wow.
But you know what? You can still find it. Also, Kino Lorber has the box sets.
Oh, perfect. So
if you're a physical media person,
support that physical media. Just go get that box set if you can, because that one is definitely worth watching as almost as like a little nice dessert. If you binge all of Peaky Blinders and then you want more.
Well, it's a lateral viewing experience, I would say.
Yeah, What was going on in the UK? What was going on in Germany at the time?
And I bring that up because if you're going to make a historical drama, you either make it about a specific event itself and really get the details right about how that event unfurled, or you use the backdrop of history to tell character studies.
Yeah.
Steve McQueen did a film called Blitz, which I thought was okay. What I didn't hate it, but it also told a story about London during the Blitz, and it also talked about race relations and class and how different people
I like those details of it. How
existed in the bomb shelters. Actually, there's a great party scene where a bunch of stuffy elites get murked off the planet.
No, yeah, oh, that one was great. And then the aftermath, the way they show you the aftermath of what that ballroom looks like after the bomb. Or that great scene, I love the scene early on where the main character, one of the main characters, who is a black British man who's been tasked with getting people to go seek shelter during the bombing raids, has to deal with white Londoners just kind of looking at him like, who are you to tell me when to seek shelter? So, and it was a nice film. And Peaky Blinders does that. How, yes, it's wartime, but the romanticized idea, World War II, crashes against the rocks of reality when you look at what was actually going on in those societies.
Let's just say that it does a better job at capturing the mood than films like Dunkirk, for example.
Exactly.
Now, again, Dunkirk is more a quote-unquote war film, but you could kind of argue this is a bit of a war film.
Oh, it's absolutely a war film because it really pulls Tommy into he's not on the battlefield anymore, but now he's caught in the intrigues of what's going on.
He never left. That's part of his story.
His mind was always there, and now he's pulled even deeper because the other main plot point of the movie is that his
estranged son Duke, played by Barry Keoghan, who we just saw in Crime 101.
Crime 101, and great role in that one. Who's been on the rise, especially since he was in that overpraised movie Saltburn, but still got him a lot of attention. Duke, we discover, has been basically running the Peaky Blinders in Tommy's absence, but he's become kind of a rogue agent. He's basically collaborating with Beckett.
Stealing medicine from hospitals,
taking supplies during the Blitz.
And you know what's fascinating? And funny enough, this is actually a film I've been thinking about. Same with Crime 101. I don't know why. It's just those films that I just keep thinking about. It has that interesting subtext that the last Planet of the Apes film, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, had, which is about, with time removed, how do you carry on the legacy of an idea?
Yes. How does life shift when you're gone? And can you repair any of it? And in Tommy's case, he's called in by his sister,
played by Sophie Rundle, Ada,
to do something about this. Because even though Tommy, we get the sense, because he's dealing with his own demons, he completely has been disattached from even his responsibilities as a father to Duke. We find out that Charles, the son he had with Elizabeth, the woman, the spy he fell in love with early in the season, doesn't appear in the movie because he's off in the African front. He's in the army and he's off in the African front. So Duke has basically been orphaned. He's basically been left as an orphan.
A war orphan, exactly. And
running a criminal outfit.
And Ada appeals to him both as his sister, but she's also an MP for that district that Duke is running rampant in.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a nice parallel to the very first season, and I think the first episode of Peaky Blinders, because some rogue agents of the Peaky Blinders gang steal guns from a factory.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And Duke steals guns in the film. Duke steals guns from the blown out factory.
Well, and Duke and Duke is threatening Tommy's legacy because now what he's doing is associating the Peaky Blinders with the worst kind of opportunists in wartime, right? That instead of contributing to the war effort against the invaders,
they're contributing to themselves.
they're contributing to themselves.
Which again, speaking of the class thing, and the reason I brought up Blitz is because the 1% in England, they were doing that.
Yeah.
But remember, out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly.
They went through channels to get their champagne and caviar while the working class people were starving and had to ration.
Even Coca-Cola was doing. They still found ways to sell soda to the Nazis while the war was going on.
But Duke is that kind of punk, like Sid Vicious,
Yes.
where if your only idea of the punk movement was from Sid Vicious, then you would think it's the worst thing on the planet Earth.
Nihilism, basically, like just pure destructive nihilism. There's a fantastic scene where Duke sits down with Beckett and kind of just explains that he feels abandoned by the world, and so he doesn't really care what happens to it. If fascism takes over, I mean, well, who cares?
Let the world burn.
Yeah, exactly. Which is nice because it gives him another layer. And in this kind of that what starts developing really almost as a Greek tragedy, right? The son of the man who used to run the place now becoming his enemy, but for reasons that are, in the best sense of tragedy, could have been avoided, right? In ways that were totally avoidable.
Because he's hurt.
Yeah.
He does that thing that, I don't know, all broken, misunderstood people where they go through their rebellious phase. I don't care about anything. Fuck the world. Fuck you. I don't care if you never loved me. In fact, that's what made me a hard man. But obviously that's the opposite, right? It's the compensation.
It's a shield for his wounds. Yeah. It's of course he'd like to.
And you know what? It connects to the world we live in now. I mean, look at all our Gen Alpha and young Gen Z people who end up turning to the manosphere influencer
the
world.
loneliness epidemic.
I'm not saying that necessarily they were abandoned by their parents or they're living in a war zone, which some are, but that sense of feeling like you've been left behind, a generational divide, it does hit home for a lot of people because we're seeing that. A lot of people are self-isolating within Instagram and through these pipelines of also broken people who, instead of trying to fix themselves, project all these misogynist, racist ideology through the idea of bettering yourself.
Yeah, this idea of people cannot make sense of the world as it is. So they're turning to these ways of thinking that fill the void, but in very dangerous ways. And now even more dangerous because now we are in wartime, right? like we are currently embroiled in a regional war.
Brother, I'm going to argue that the U.S. has never left being in war.
Oh no, of course, but now we've lit one of the big ones, right? Like there's a whole region now in flames, and people are even more confused. At least the polls show most people are against the war, but still they're confused, they're angry, they don't know what to make of it, and
like Beckett, people prey on those young men.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. No, Beckett could exist today. Beckett could be hanging out with Tony Robinson or these Douglas Murray and these kinds
Tel Aviv Tommy.
Yeah, Tel Aviv Tommy, Douglas Murray, and all these other proto-fascists that are being opportunists right now, taking advantage of the chaos and the uncertainty to promote their own agendas.
So that's where Tommy has to come in.
Yeah.
And he is this broken shell. Obviously, he wants to die. I mean, that's kind of been a running theme throughout the show. He keeps getting into these predicaments. He keeps edging death, essentially. He wants to get there, but he hates it when it's not on his terms, right? He wants to die which is kind of an interesting concept on its own. He wants to die in factors he can all control in a world that is rapidly moving and is the least controllable element.
Yeah, he wants to have a say in it, right? Like he doesn't want to keep going, but at the same time, like you just alluded to, he wants to do it on his own terms. Basically, it's like, fine, if there's one thing I want absolute control in, it's how my own life ends. But he does feel, and that's what's nice about the beneath all the World War II intrigue and everything, the underlying theme here is of a man who truly does love his son and wants to go make amends, stop it from becoming a worse nightmare.
Well, it connects to something I said earlier, that as the Peaky Blinders series went on, right, larger stakes in the world, but infinitely more personal for Tommy.
Exactly.
At this point, Tommy has lost most of his family.
And
Ada
prestige,
and Duke are basically the only people he has left. And as it turns out, Ada gets popped.
yeah. She actually dies.
And Duke is almost the one to do it.
And yeah, well, no small part thanks to Duke, because Duke in his weird confusion about the whole situation basically opens the door for Beckett to do it. And
he's very close to Duke.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like, he's about to do it, but something stops him. And I think it's that fascinating motivation of when you're so conflicted inside, you don't even know what choices to make. It's like your body goes on this interesting autopilot that it starts acting based on the deepest parts of your subconscious. I mean, my goodness, Freud would have loved Tommy and Duke. I mean, truly like father, like son.
Well,
right?
and Freud is referenced, right? Throughout in the last two seasons, they talk a lot about how Tommy starts reading Freud, because at the time, psychoanalysis was still kind of a novelty. So he's trying to find answers for himself as why is this happening? Why am I like this right now? And you're right. Duke also becomes an interesting psychological case in the movie, because he does have a conscience. He does have some, whatever you want to call it, right? An inner voice that beneath all the bluster, that knows that this is not going to end well if he sticks to these very dark forces, right, that Beckett represents.
And Tommy has to come in and save the day, but more like save Duke's soul, right? Yeah. Because Tommy is this damned person.
Yeah.
And he feels cursed. And every death has happened because he's this cursed figure, and every person he interacts with is tangentially cursed. And he sees visions throughout the film, but it also reinvigorates that last kind of flame within him to put things on a path where he can end on his terms.
He's trying hard. There's that fantastic scene where he basically fights Duke in pig shit, right? In a pigsty.
They have a tussle.
And it's that one moment where, or at least the first key moment, where we realize it's not a goodies versus baddie type of story. It's more like this man truly cares for his offspring, right? For this person that is the flesh and blood extension of him.
Well, he wouldn't be there. Yeah. If he didn't care.
Oh yeah, and especially if he's just waiting for death.
And as our as my father pointed out, that Michael, his nephew, he doesn't give him that at a certain point. He actually realizes that Michael makes his choices, and at the end of the day, Tommy pops him.
Yeah.
No fanfare. It's like, you made your bed. And I suppose because Tommy's lost just about everyone of his blood and his kin, that he can at least try.
Duke is the last chance to truly redeem himself and not leave just a disaster behind. basically.
Exactly. The other thing that I find that I liked is originally when we first see Duke, I thought, oh my God, he's just going to be the completely unhinged guy, kind of like Barry Keoghan's character in Crime 101, where he's just crazy, man. He's just crazy. I'm so glad that they make it that Stephen Knight makes it a little bit more interesting, more human.
Very human.
That he's just acting out, right? The reason I mentioned Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is because in that film, Caesar, the main character from the previous 3 films, the Caesar trilogy, he dies and he has this symbol. And over time, it shows how symbols in mythology can get reinterpreted by just about any factor. And now, I think hundreds of years have gone by between those films, but in Peaky Blinders, 7 years' time is a decent amount of time, especially when war kicks off.
Oh yeah, it's not the longest stretch, but at the same time, it's enough of a stretch for things to happen.
So Peaky Blinders have become these rapscallions again. I mean, when they're confronted for stealing weapons, they just beat up everyone who's around.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, because Duke has taken the gang back to what they were. Funny enough, he's in a way he brings it back to not so much Tommy but to Arthur, right? That no holds bar street thug attitude.
Well, like when Arthur takes over the club.
Yes,
probably one of the most referenced clips and gifs online is when he takes over a high-end club in London.
Oh, and just by order of the Peaky Blinders, everyone has just been beaten up and bloodied, and that ruthless nature of crime. I've always, for example, this thing in Mexico going on right now, this whole situation. I've always had the thesis that the cartels, in a way, are the purest embodiment of capitalism in the world, because you make a product, you really don't care what it is or what it does. And if you have competitors, you just smoke them. You just kill them, and that's how you negotiate. And what happens to the people consuming your product? Who cares? And anything we need, we just use sheer brute violence. Duke is taking the Peaky Blinders back to that, basically, at the beginning.
It's like Peaky Blinders even before the first series, because even then, there was still some order, right? They had a sense of an operation.
Code of conduct, basically.
But you feel like it was Arthur and Tommy, like, right after they came back from the trenches.
Yes, exactly.
And yeah, Tommy comes back, I think, partly because he has a feeling that his sister has died, and she is. So yeah, he was too late on that front to stop her death, but he can at least try with one person. And yeah, he kind of has his suit up scene, and he goes back to the original bar. And it's great because these young lads who now occupy the bar are dancing, and they have no idea who he is. So he walks in and he turns off the music.
And some bull-headed guy walks over and tries to intimidate Tommy, and well, even after they warn him, this is Thomas Shelby, and he's like, well, I don't care who this guy is. Tommy, drops a grenade literally into his shirt. And it's a great moment to show also the generation gap, right, between Tommy's time and the new generation that doesn't realize who he is, and how his name still carries authority, right? Or he'll just retake that authority if necessary.
But I do love that idea of generational gaps, and it is something we spoke about in the film Arco.
Yeah.
That current generations can't foresee the damage that they're doing to 1 or 2 generations newer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That their actions will fundamentally mess them up from the womb. And that people might be born in a doomed world, and you can't save yourself by not buying avocado toast in a world where you can spend $11 billion bombing a children's school, right?
Oh, well, and Yeah, I mean, and it applies to the movie in the sense that Peaky Blinders, the show, premiered in 2013. Quite a lot has happened since 2013 to the world. Just think of where we were in 2013 compared to now. I mean, things were already becoming unsettled in 2013. They were already pretty unsettled. But now, where we are, things were planted back then for a lot of what's happening now, because a lot of what we're seeing now in the Middle East is also a consequence of decisions that were being taken back in 2013. So, like in the movie, how are we going? Because think about it, if you were 12 in 2013, you're now in your early 20s. So how are we going to redeem the world for the next generation? And I think that haunts Thomas Shelby. Maybe he's not an expert on fascism, even though they present him as literate and as a guy who writes poetry and is writing a book. But clearly,
he knows William Blake.
He knows Blake.
Well, not literally, but he knows his poetry.
Yeah, he can quote Blake. He realizes that everything his generation did is now, in a way, going to leave either a destroyed world or something better, and it's going to be up to someone Duke's age to make that happen. So is he going to leave a psycho behind, or at least someone who can do the legacy justice?
But he doesn't force him.
Yeah.
And I think part of what makes the film interesting, and I think a lot of people, at least in the States, will probably not get that part, or they'll call it plot contrivance or whatever people who don't like critical thinking like to use, their little buzzwords. Yeah. But I like the fact that taking a chance on somebody is placing a faith that they can make an informed decision. That, right, Tommy isn't literally holding Duke hostage to help them.
Exactly. It's almost like he, at this point, is so tired but has also learned a lot in his journey, that he knows that Duke almost has to come to his conclusions himself. Like Duke has to come around on his own. Tommy's still determined to stop Beckett, but Duke on his own has to realize, I'm collaborating with a monster, with a total, just disaster of a person.
And the idea that someone would even place that trust to not put you on the leash.
Exactly.
Is in itself a form of support.
Well, it's almost like, in a way, Tommy still has enough faith in his own genes, right? Like, well, this is my son. If he's anything like me, he also won't want to become someone's slave, right? Because Beckett even uses Beckett alludes a lot to the fact that they're Romani, right? And how Duke should just kind of feel lucky that he's even allowed to work with this guy, because when the Nazis take over, when the fascists take over, they're going to wipe out his community anyway.
Well, Stephen Graham's character even tells Tommy, Stephen Graham, who plays Hayden Stagg, who's introduced in the later seasons, tells him, this is your war buddy, like, you're Romani. Like, what do you think they're going to do?
Exactly. Which was a great little subtext on how another part of Tommy that feels the need to get involved is the fact that, aside from politics, at the end of the day, he is Romani, and he knows that who he is basically being threatened with extinction.
And it's very much that punk middle finger to people who have the privilege to say, well, I don't get involved in politics. I'm like,
yeah, well,
your groceries are expensive and gas in Los Angeles is $8 a gallon. You don't think this is political?
Oh yeah. Or Latinos for Trump.
Well, Nazi theology, essentially ideology, but it is kind of theology if you think about it, is that your state only functions by inventing new enemies to fight against.
Yeah.
I mean, the U.S. keeps doing that, right? It never said it waged war in Iraq. It said it waged war on terror. It waged war on drugs. It's just this nebulous idea so you can do whatever you want.
Or and we clearly see that Israel's regional goals didn't end with Gaza, right? That after Gaza, they now Iran and
South of Lebanon.
well, and there's already talk that if Iran were to be defeated, then they're going to aim at Turkey next, right? That Turkey will be the next one. So it never ends, and Tommy, I think by instinct, gets that, right? Because he himself was operating in a world for so long that was about, okay, I knocked out one competitor, but here's another one. Okay, I took over this, but what about this? And oh no, now someone wants to take over what I took over. And
And then, of course, they get involved with the IRA or
Yes!
the proto-IRA.
the proto-IRA, they get involved with all these different groups. He's well aware that
Russians at some point, too.
Russians also were, white Russians were also involved in season 2 that wanted to smuggle guns to the opposition to the Bolsheviks. I mean, yeah, Tommy becomes such a player in all these major 20th century events, but it's a great metaphor for what not only his world was like, but what our world is like too. And it all ties back to the father-son dynamic, because what kind of player does he want his son to be in that kind of very complicated world where choosing your loyalties is a lot trickier than one would think. And so then the whole plot culminates of the movie in this spectacular eventual showdown with Beckett that
And some Nazis. I never tire of seeing Nazis getting
get blown up, get it. But you know what's great too? The movie could have easily turned that into a Guy Ritchie World War II movie action spectacle. But no, it actually, I mean, you get some great special effects, but it does become more about the characters.
Yeah, it's still relatively subdued,
Yeah.
despite me saying earlier that Peaky Blinders isn't necessarily subtle. It doesn't make it into some balletic
Right.
gunfight. It actually doesn't take too long. It's more about the buildup.
Yeah.
with a great a kind of series of score moments. There's a few that I listened back to back because I think they're excellent. There's a track called Angel.
Which was a Massive Attack song originally, and it's covered here.
He's on the dark side.
Then an original track called The Tunnel. And then a follow-up to that called Medusa.
In my life, I was changing. Pull it down, I go clean out on the pavement. Living's easy. All the shadows know me there. It's in my life.
Oh, those were great. Yeah.
Just amazing, and the build-up. I also want to say, in terms of visual effects, heavy visual effects show. And yeah, obviously you can tell that set extensions with bombed out factories, but one, it works clearly because they put time into how they would actually frame the shot, which, wow, who would have guessed? But also amazing explosions. I think we get 2 or 3 really nice explosions, crispy, impactful explosions.
And it's important to point that out because those of you who follow original Netflix action productions know that Netflix doesn't exactly have the best reputation for its standalone action movies.
Well, it's content.
Yeah.
They know you're putting it on while you're playing video games or ordering DoorDash.
They'll try sometimes, like the famous
Well, Heart of Stone, for example.
no way, but Extraction 2 had a famous uncut, like a one long tracking shot on a train. That was actually pretty cool. But that's it. The rest are like Heart of Stone, where Gal Gadot looks like she's basically just fighting green screen for the whole movie, even though she herself also looks like a green screen creation. And then was it the ones the Russo brothers did that were also
The Gray Man? I hated
yeah,
that.
just ugh.
But
awful
unlike that movie, the moves in this film did fuck.
Yes, exactly. And for those of you who haven't seen Gray Man, just look up that quote. It's a true howler. But it's a wonderful summation in The Immortal Man, the climactic action scene, because it does then become about Thomas finding redemption and leaving a proper legacy behind and saving his son, essentially saving his son. That's really what it becomes.
And it leaves it open because we know that Duke is both the product of being Tommy's heir, but is his own person who's a bit more crass, right? He isn't going to just be his father, but also the saving the day. Yeah, they stop this plot, but as is pointed out, history's not going to know that they did this.
Yeah.
So they're doing this, right? They're in the middle of bombed out factories. Like, this is just another bombed out factory.
And that's kind of when you really care, right? He really cares for his son, and at the same time, he really cares about stopping these fascists, even if no one's ever going to give him credit, even if he's not going to be in the newspapers the next day. But he knows in his heart this has to be done. This is the right thing to do. It's kind of like when people who the world will never know, myself included, who will post about what was going on in Gaza right over the last 2 years.
Or the journalists in Gaza who've all been killed.
Yeah, exactly. But they're trying to get the story out there to people, and they're trying to get the truth out there.
Or one of the filmmakers of The Voice of Hind Rajab who can't attend the Oscars.
Oh, right. Yes, exactly. These are people who will never achieve the same whatever tabloid or headline fame as Christopher Nolan, but they're contributing more in their own way too.
Yeah, maybe the world might not know. Maybe not good old Winnie Churchill
right.
will know. But the people Tommy cares about knows that they did this and knows that he is willingly passing the buck. He's formally giving Duke the crown.
Yes. And
because, I do want to say one plot point that I thought they were going to do is they introduce Rebecca Ferguson's character, who plays technically two characters, Paolo and Zelda.
Oh, right.
And she's there because she wants to see Duke become the king.
Yeah.
And I thought, they're going to do that thing where they're going to have set up that Duke is going to pull a fast one on Tommy and forcibly take the crown. And that's what it's actually going to be about, is that there's going to be a big showdown between the old guard and the new guard. Tommy calls that out, tells her, like, I know why you're doing this. And in fact, that never happens. Yeah. And I really respect that.
Yeah, it was nice that it doesn't go, and something it didn't do that I appreciated, and I used to chuckle during the show, was those absurd, I get it on TV, but and I've told you about this before, that I felt the show would sometimes do some wacky twists. So and so wasn't killed. They were actually, they plotted to make it look like he was dead all along.
Well, Alfie is one.
Yes, the guy takes a shot to the head, but is somehow alive.
Somehow Alfie returned because Tom Hardy.
Because Tom Hardy's just
cool. And that's it, because Tom Hardy.
Because Tom Hardy's just cool. The movie doesn't have any of that. In the movie, you don't get any of these kind of absurd... As far as I know, from the way the movie ends, Tommy is dead. Like, he dies.
And
he's gone.
I'm glad that they did that.
Yeah.
And I'm also glad that, yes, in the show they did do that. There's some contrivances and some very twisty explanations for why things happen, but key characters who are killed never return.
They're gone. Yeah,
the Shelby family dead.
They're gone.
Loved ones dead.
Oh,
dead. They are out.
I was actually worried we would get some kind of scene near the end where Arthur wasn't dead all along. He
was fighting in the shadows.
He was fighting,
or that Tommy faked his death to remove himself from all of this. Tom, take a lesson from Peaky Blinders.
Yeah.
If you don't want your series to end with a whimper, actually have your characters sacrifice themselves, because that has more of an impact than pulling shit out of your ass.
You know what, Tom? and you guys know which Tom we're talking about. Last name starts with a C. Tom, if James Bond could do it in No Time to Die, surely you could too. Give the character a proper exit.
I'll also add Tim Roth that we mentioned, chewing the scenery just enough.
Sensational.
And he's not in the film that much, but that nice line of being almost a Tarantino type character. But guess what?
He has enough of a presence. That's the thing.
Also, no big monologue.
No.
There was no villain monologue. Like, he has a dialogue with Duke at the end, but no big speech.
Well,
I was shocked.
You get just enough of the details that you need to establish who this guy is. And I don't know. And it's something I appreciated from the filmmakers. I don't know if they just think maybe they give American audiences too much credit. But from the little details you get from Beckett, you can just draw that there's a guy who fought in World War I, probably messed up in many ways, and he became a fascist. You know, he's one of those veterans who discovered in fascism the answers for, you know, whatever, you know, to change Europe how he wants, and that's all you need. You don't need, there's no flashbacks to, there's not even any flashback scenes to Beckett's origin or whatever.
Nope, not at all. No,
we know just enough.
And, you know, speaking of our past episode, it's what we talked about with like Limonov and Mishima and Martin Eden, like those kinds of characters who end up taking that hard right path. And, you know, something else I'll also add, you know, because I thought of this in the same way as X-Files Fight the Future. No big exposition dumps for the most part.
No,
I was actually I thought they might do that thing where Tommy would meet Beckett or he would meet some character, right? And then someone would have to lore dump everything that he did.
I mean, they do something smart like the X-Files movie, and like other recent.
Now, we do get our lore dump in the limo scene.
Yes, but I was going to say they do something like in the X-Files movie where if they do it at least like that great scene where Mulder's at the bar, you know, kind of just telling the audience who he is, but in a way that still feels like he's just a sad guy at a bar getting drinks. They did a lot of that in this movie.
But even plot-wise, what I meant is the limo scene, which we did give credit for. The guy who gives that monologue.
Oh, yes.
Like, he made every word count, but we don't get much of that.
Yes, exactly.
We don't get any big plot dumps.
Yes, yeah, we
like
don't,
that.
Well, we don't have someone trying to explain to a newcomer the whole arch of the show, like, you know,
and why Tommy needs to do what he's doing. They'll have like a one line, like
like one little descriptor, but nothing too. You won't get overloaded if you were not into the show. I would compare this one a little bit to what I think are the other two strong Netflix offshoots of a series. There's one called Luther with Idris Elba, also extended from a British detective show that's
also
a lot of
called
fun.
Luther.
Also called Luther, and the movie was like this in the sense that if you had never watched Luther, you could still watch the movie and be totally into it. And El Camino, Terry Gilliam's
Vince
Gilligan's Breaking Bad movie that he made for Netflix, El Camino. Same thing. It helps a lot if you've seen the show, but you can still enjoy the movie on its own and get a lot of the essentials of the plot. I think Immortal Man is a better film than both of those, but it functions in that same way, I would say.
El Camino is an interesting example because it does take place way after the events of Breaking Bad, or not way after, but it removes itself from the events and tells its own story about moving forward, in fact. And yeah, you can watch it and enjoy it as is, but definitely it's a more contingent on knowing the characters from Breaking Bad. And I suppose that's the next question. We very much enjoyed it as is, but how much can someone just watch the film and just enjoy it as a film?
Oh,
if we put our hat on, like, of course, knowing who Arthur is, yeah, it's important. And maybe Ada's death is more impactful. But if we try and remove ourselves from the show, would that still work?
Yeah, I think if you walk into it, 100% blind, uh, clearly you would notice there's things connected to the show, but on its own, I think it works as this film about an estranged father who clearly came from this underworld, trying to save his son while World War II is raging.
Like Orpheus.
Like Orpheus. Yeah, no, yeah, there's a very Greek tragedy element to it. And yeah, it stands on its own. This man is trying to keep his son from becoming a catastrophe and they're caught up in all this World War II intrigue as it's going on. Obviously you'll be enriched if you watch the show, but you could watch the movie. So for example, the ending scene, right? Where they burn the what do they call it, the carriage or the
caravan,
the Romani caravan, that it's part of this Romani tradition when somebody passes away in the world of the show. When they do the close-ups of all these different characters of the Shelby family, there's portraits of them.
Yeah, they're
in the
portraits.
caravan. If you've seen the show, you clearly know who all these people are, and you'll know all the backstories. But if you walk in cold, clearly you'll still understand that it's this man's family, or that these are figures from his past, or that these are relatives, right? How many movies do we watch where they'll pan across, someone's shelf in their house and we see photos that we by just instinct know, oh, that must be their grandparents or their parents, etc. So yeah, I think you can walk into this movie totally clean.
I do feel like the moment when he comes into the bar, though, I think, yeah, you can get, in a way, it's a good exposition. Like, okay, this Tommy does have some significance, but that does feel like the moment that most relies on having seen the show.
Sure.
You know,
I mean, unless you take it as, so many of these gangster movies, right, where the guy comes back to his old neighborhood and everyone's like, oh, yeah, guys. That, like, what's that Brian De Palma movie, Carlito's Way with Al Pacino?
Or suppose, Western like Shane or any of those.
I mean, it's better if
singers.
you've seen the show to get that
Sure.
scene. But on its own, I think the average viewer would still be like, oh, so he's a badass.
And like Fight the Future.
Yes.
Now, Fight the Future was connecting season
5 and 6.
5 and 6, right? So there's an overarching plot, but I would argue that if you put it on as like just a nice science fiction thriller, I would not be lost.
Oh no, you would totally get it. It's like this guy is looking for alien life. Scully's the skeptic. Clearly, there's a government plot going on with this virus. Something smart Chris Carter did was that whole plot line of the virus and all these things. He expanded on it in the movie in a way that was not mentioned in the show. So if you were viewing the movie, you were getting information that you would have not gotten anyway if you were watching the series. Immortal Man also has, again, these nice developments where you wouldn't know what happens to Tommy unless you watch this movie.
In an alternate universe, Fight the Future actually could have been a pilot for
the show,
X-Files,
Easily. It could have easily launched the series.
Put it on HBO. For them, that's nothing.
There's nothing. Whereas Peaky Blinders, I guess a key difference is Peaky Blinders is ending the show. So in a way. So if
in that sense, it's like El Camino.
Yes.
Because
yes.
The finale of Breaking Bad stands on its own, and El Camino really feels like an epilogue.
Yes,
like you don't have to watch it, but if you just want another good story that gives another type of resolution.
If you want to know what happened.
Because remember, Tommy does get a resolution at the end of the series. In the show. When you get to the end, it's like, okay, get it. But the epilogue gives that nice internal. It ties the internal machinations, the psychological machinations of Tommy.
No, exactly. It frames what this. It basically gives him his proper exit, and we get like a final glimpse at what he really was all about. in the end. He was a haunted man, left scarred by the war, who tried to build something. As happens in life, it doesn't go exactly as planned. And he tries to do some good right before exiting. It's all he really can do by the end. And you could say seems to have succeeded. But what's nice about the show is, for now, if they do another one, maybe about Duke, we'll see. We'll see if how well Tommy's efforts last. So yeah, Peaky Blinders, the Immortal Man. And hey, if you see the movie first, hopefully you may be inspired to then binge the series. Go check out the series.
You can treat the series like Tommy watching his life flash before his eyes.
Exactly.
You know what? I almost feel inclined to watch the series because I started it years ago, originally when I was back in uni. And yeah, binged the first bit and then caught up with it as it was released. So it'll be nice to refresh. And very few shows, I actually feel inclined to do that.
No,
even really good ones. Like, I love Succession, but I don't know if I would necessarily want to rewatch that. But I don't know, Peaky Blinders, I would like to do that.
No, absolutely. No, this was the first movie I've seen this year that I genuinely would want to watch again. It was that much fun.
IMAX, please.
Please,
come on.
Put it out there.
Please.
Please, my friends. Now, if you want to keep talking with us about TV, we will be at the West Los Angeles Public Library March 21st. We're going to be talking about Twin Peaks, the original classic from the 90s by Maestro David Lynch. We're going to be talking about the first 2 episodes with a panel. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be talking about, as you can imagine, everything Lynchian if you listen to our episode.
We're even going to ask the question, what does that even mean?
Exactly.
Because everyone knows the feeling of what Lynchian is, but no one really knows what that is and how David Lynch planted so many seeds in the industry. But let's just say so many people have not harvested those crops quite right.
Right. Exactly. And those of you who have been listening to us attentively can probably guess what and who we are talking about. But if you don't know, again, come down to the Los Angeles, the West Side Los Angeles Public Library, where we'll be having this fun talk on Twin Peaks, a show that definitely changed the TV landscape in the 90s, set the stage for similar shows like The X-Files, which we talked about earlier. Well, everybody, hopefully you check out The Immortal Man and check us out at the West LA Public Library. And with that, we sign off.
By order of the Peaky Blinders.